We live in a dark world. But in the darkness, there are lights. Lights upon lights. They're beautiful when we look at them from here. It's like we're looking down on a sky full of stars. Some lights are bright and colorful and constant. Others are dim. You can barely make them out. Some are so bright that they light up entire areas around them. Every one of these lights has a story that we can't tell from here. Some of them tell a story of brokenness. Some tell a story of hope. Some tell a story of reconciliation, or pain, justice, or loss. Some tell a story of mistakes. Others tell a story of forgiveness. The Bible says, "Let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven." We have a light that glows inside of us. It tells a story. It tells the story of hope, of something better, of redemption. The brighter we shine, the more people can see what God has done in us. So keep your light on. It might light the way for someone to see Jesus.
Hey, good morning and welcome to West. We're so glad that you are checking us out online this morning. Welcome to our online campus. Today and next Sunday will be the last two times that we live stream at 10 a.m. After that, beginning on August the 8th at 9 a.m., we are going to start live streaming. You are your own campus now. Now that we are back live at the high school, we are going to be at Lake Norman High School at 10 a.m. And then at 9 a.m., we are going to be live streaming here with you, our online campus. Or if you are watching on demand, we give a special and warm welcome to you as well. If you're new here, we'd love for you to text the number that you see on the screen. We have some gifts that we'd love to offer you, and you can opt in to having West communication or not. That's totally up to you, but we just want to let you know that we're grateful that you're here. Last week I asked for you to put your names in the chat room and asked you to talk with me about macaroni and cheese, and so thanks for doing that. It was interesting to read your replies. In a couple of weeks when we're live streaming, I'm going to have an iPad up here and I'm actually going to communicate with you during the message. I'm really excited about that. It'll be interesting to see how we balance all that, but we're going to try some new things together. And so please type your name in the chat room this morning. Let us know that you're here. Let us know that you're worshiping with us and that you are a part of the West community. This morning we are going to talk about light, especially as we get ready to reopen and to the community. We're going to talk about changes and the ways that we have changed, the ways that we have changed as a church, and the change that we hope to implement and bring about in our community. So last week we talked about macaroni and cheese and being the salt of the earth, and today we're going to continue that and we're going to talk about light. I hope you leave today's message feeling renewed and refreshed and ready to go and do some great things and make this world a better place.
Changes. Turn and face the strain. Changes. Don't wanna be a richer man. Changes. Turn and face the strain. Changes. It's gonna have to be a different man. Time may change me, but I can't trace time.
You've heard me say over and over again, you're probably sick and tired of hearing me talk about this, but you're going to have to hear it for a few more times. We all were anxious when COVID first hit. and we wondered what would happen to us as a church. Some of my colleague friends, they have bank accounts that of their churches that have $500,000. One had $1 million in an endowment to use in case of an emergency, and certainly a pandemic cited or created an emergency. And so we did not have that. And so the staff and we decided that it really was an issue of faith, and that we were going to keep leading a community of faith, keep leading the church and engaging with you in ways that we would hopefully create, and that eventually, hopefully, we would be on the other side and the church would still be intact. Last week, or actually a week and a half ago, some of the staff and I gathered at the high school, and we started rolling out all those gray carts and that we had used for 10 years. And we had quite a lot of trash, actually. I'm like, nope, can't use that, can't use that, can't use that. It's so beaten and worn and broken. So many things are dated, antiquated. We don't need those things anymore. And it was interesting to think about all the parts and pieces and events that had happened over the last 10 years that had built us up on a foundation of Christ to get us to the point that then when COVID happened, everything shut down, all the stuff went in the trailers, nothing was used for a year and a half almost, and then we start dragging it out, seeing what we wanted to use again and realizing that the answer is actually very little. I mean, our technology, yes, but just the stuff that we had, we looked at it in a new light. This morning, I want us to think about light and looking at things with light. What is the purpose of light anyway? Have you ever asked yourself that question? Like, is it so that we look at the light? Actually, no. Like, there are some really bright lights in this room here, and if I were to glance at those and then look back at you, I would not be able to see you and see the camera because the lights are so bright it would blind me for a few minutes. When light is created, it is not so that we look at the light. The light is created so that we actually see the things around it. It illuminates things so that we can see the space or items or others. Have you ever thought about how Christianity made it so many thousands of years? Probably not. That's probably not something you sit around and ponder. But, as we were thinking, are we going to make it as a church in a pandemic? And then here we are. There are some reasons that we were able to make it over the past 16 months without worshiping together in person, going strictly online. There are lots of reasons that we were able to go from there to here and actually come out okay. And some of those very same reasons are the reasons that Christianity made it for a couple of thousands of years. So think about it for just a second. So we use the term crucified, that Jesus was crucified on a cross. In modern day terms, we would use the term massacred. We would say that the followers of Jesus, their leader, was massacred and killed in this tragic way. And what happens to movements generally when their leader is killed, tragically massacred, crucified? Lots of times when there are movements of people that follow a charismatic leader, when the leader is taken away, the movement dies. Especially if the movement exists in a time where the government is oppressive to the people that are a part of that movement. Think about it. The Roman government, they were not fans of the followers of the way. They were not fans of the followers of Jesus. They killed him. They were not fans of the early Christians, followers of Christ. And the Jewish leaders, they were not fans of Jesus and his followers either. So this little band of believers, they were up against insurmountable odds. Yet something happened that let them go from 2,000 years till now with this movement not dying like the leader died, and the movement not going away. Why is that? What happened? What made that happen? And that same thing, those same reasons are the foundation of why we as a church made it through a pandemic and are able to come out on the other side and still exist. Those reasons are the fact that we, just like the early followers of Jesus, we here, the people at West, we are about the why that Jesus taught. Jesus taught very concrete lessons that the people were supposed to do. He taught what they were supposed to do, how they were supposed to live. And he also taught them why. And they embraced that why so much so that even when their leader was massacred, even when the leaders of the movement after Jesus was killed tragically, even after the other leaders like Peter and Paul were martyred, the movement continued. And not only did it continue, but it grew, and it grew rapidly. In 68 AD, the governor of Rome, the emperor of Rome, Nero, not only was he so adamant that he was the political leader and wanted all this power, he burned down his own city so he could rebuild it and make his mansions and his castles and all those things more prominent. He also massacred thousands of Christians. They persecuted them, they hung them, they crucified them, they killed them. Thousands of people, just because they followed the movement of Christ, just because they were followers of the way. So how did Christianity continue and thrive even when you have a leader like Nero intentionally wiping them out? Well, it's because they were all about the why. And I believe that we as a faith community, we've been about the why. And it is my hope that as we continue in this next chapter of our journey, that we are going to be about the why even more. In the Gospel of Matthew, we read that Jesus was teaching all the followers. He had gathered together with them on a mountainside. It's one of the most famous sermons because we believe that it was not just one sermon, it was multiple conversations or messages or sermons, the Sermon on the Mount. And he was trying to tell them, here is what you are, here is who you are. And he said things like, blessed are the merciful, and blessed are the meek, and blessed are those who mourn. And they were listening, and I'm sure it ruffled some feathers, and they're like, what? Blessed are the meek? The meek? That doesn't usually work out too good. But he's like, if you do this, then this is going to happen. And so he's like, blessed are those who mourn, and blessed are those who are meek, for you will inherit the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven. And he goes on and he teaches all these things in those messages, the Sermon on the Mount. But then at the end of that, he gets to the why. And I touched on the first part of that last week when we talked about the salt. He went on to say, you are the salt of the earth. And if the salt loses its flavor, what's going to happen? You're the salt. You need to give the earth, you need to give all that you are encountering. You need to give it flavor. And so many times flavor is already there. You need to be the agent of change that brings the flavor out of that which already exists. And you also need to preserve it. Do you know that salt was one of the most precious commodities a couple of thousand years ago? Like, you would pay people for services rendered not with money, but with salt. It was that precious. Now, I mean, we throw it over our shoulder if we're superstitious, right? But back then, salt was, I mean, it was essential. And so he tells them, you are the salt of the earth. You, that's the why. You are the salt. You are to be this agent of change, this agent of preservation of all that I've taught you. And then he goes on to give just some absolutely beautiful and powerful and simple words. And those words that are so simple and were so simple a couple of thousand years ago, they are also so simple for us here today. I want you to look at these words with me. Jesus said, you are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. The people would have understood the example, the story of you are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hidden. When we fly into Uganda, it is one of the most powerful moments of the journey. Because as we are flying in, we look out through the airplane windows. We always fly in at night. We always leave at night. And as you are looking out the window, you can see the lights of the cities off in the distance. But then, after you get away from the city and you look out over the countryside, it's so dark. Because they don't have electricity out there, and you can see the tiny little fires. So there's a couple of different parts to that example and that metaphor. But first, when Jesus said, a city on a hill cannot be hidden, when we fly in, we can see the city. Just like you saw in that video earlier, you see the buildings and you see the light coming out from there. When there are lots of communities gathered together in a central location, even where there are places without electricity and they have their communal fires and they're gathered close together, you see those. You see the lampstands. You see the lanterns. You see all that light gathered together. It can't be hidden. And that's what Jesus was telling them. You are like those cities. You people. You are the light that cannot be hidden. And so you have to take that light and you have to let it shine before everyone. You have to be the agent of change. And guess what they did? I mean, they went and they did the what that he had taught. And they did it so radically and they did it so well and so consistently that the effect lasted and caught on and then kept perpetuating itself so that it lasted over 2,000 years, and it still lasts today. One of the advantages that we had as a church when COVID happened is that we did not have a mortgage. If we had had a mortgage, I do not know. I mean, we would have had to be like some of my other friends when they were like, yeah, we're sending out another email saying, we need your money. We need you to still give. Even though you're not in person, we need you to mail your checks in. They're like, I'm so tired of talking about needing money. From the time that we started until now, we said that we were not going to invest our money in bricks and mortar, that we were going to invest our money in making the community and making the lives of the people a better place. Someday, if there's like some magical opportunity of some building that comes open, I mean, we're not like anti-structure, but we're not going to like go launch some kind of fancy building campaign just so we can have a sanctuary. We have a sanctuary. It's Lake Norman High School. In fact, when we talk about it, when we say, oh, we're going to take our things to the sanctuary, we laugh and we're like, oh, yeah, it's a high school auditorium. But we do. We have a sacred space. But for the longest time, we're like, no, we're going to make sure that we keep our operating costs as low as we can, especially with bricks and mortar, because we're going to build partnerships with area businesses. And when we look at a space, we're going to make sure it's a multi-use space, not just build some fancy thing that sits empty for 6 days and we only use it a few hours on a Sunday morning or a Saturday evening. That's the why. That's how we as a church are intentional about being the light. That's our way of being a city. We do things like a back to school bash where we work with a local nonprofit that we helped found and then pulled in community members so that thousands of children get school supplies. Over the last 10 years, close to 20,000 students, if you add them all up cumulatively, over 20,000 students have gotten new tennis shoes and school supplies and what they need to get ready to go back to school. That's being a city on the hill, a city that can't be extinguished. That's what it means to be the light. And you are a part of that. If you're a part of this community, if you give your money to the West offerings, if you buy school supplies, or if you buy canned food for the backpack mission, and you help feed the kids in our local area and in the Third Creek community, if at Christmas you buy some gifts for people that are anonymous, that are in need, not just monetarily, but some special love during that time, or if you're a part of supporting the Kindness Closet in downtown Mooresville with sanitary items for women and men and children, there are so many ways that you are the light. It's more than just about giving of our resources. It's about how we love other people, how we forgive other people. That too is being the light. And being the light, it's the why I am convinced we're still here. Because we get that it isn't about us. We get that there's something that burns inside of us that is supposed to make us different. That's what happened with those disciples and those early followers of Jesus. They were different. Something in them was different than all the others that made them so passionate about what they were about and who they were about and why they did what they did, that they were willing to go to their death because they loved the mission so much. They understood that they were the light, and that when they let their light shine, it would illuminate the space and the world for others to see, so that then they wanted to carry that light too. And that mission and that movement, it lasted over 2,000 years, so much so that here we are today. And our work is not finished. We have this amazing way to be the light. And it's one of the reasons we're so excited about having different sites. So our online campus, like when we do mission things at the high school, we're going to have mission opportunities there for you. Like go to Amazon, like most of us do at least once a week, right? And purchase something for one of the area missions that we are working with. Or if you live in a different state or a different geographical area, go find your soup kitchen. When we're volunteering at the soup kitchen here, go find your local organization. We, as staff and leaders and ministry teams, everything that we do in person, we are also going to replicate and offer to you online, because we know that we're called to be the light. And that when we let our light shine, it's contagious. It's how we got from nowhere to here, even living through a pandemic. As I shared with you, the Back to School Bash, which is this event where we give kids free tennis shoes, free school supplies, and a fun festival-like atmosphere so no one has to feel poor to come to the bash. We finished it a couple of weeks ago, and it was an amazing year. Next year, we're excited. We're going to be back in person with all the bouncies and the zoo, the little petting zoo, and all that kind of stuff. But we have found a way over the last 2 years to morph the bash into a hybrid event so that it was safe, COVID safe for the guests that came. Shannon Stanley is the current president and has been for the past couple of years for Inspire Our Children, which is a nonprofit that West founded so that we could have a nonprofit entity to house the bash and other missions that we want to do and pull in community members and make it much bigger than just something we own as a church. And this year it was just such an organizational success, and kids were touched and excited, and lives were changed and transformed. And we had a board meeting the other evening, and we were celebrating that, like, we're not actually totally exhausted this year. Normally we are after the bash, and no one wants to see another school supply for a long time. But this time there was so much energy in that meeting. Like, people were saying, well, what could we, and how could we, and what if? So much so that the idea was given birth. We've talked about it on and off for years, but like, what if we actually had a bash for teachers? So we're going to have a Thanksgiving for teachers in November and give them the opportunity to come and choose from school supplies and some of the other supplies that they need. They'll have their own bash. We were so excited to be able to do that. And one of the reasons that we've been able to do that is because Shannon Stanley understands the why of what Jesus said. When we started, this whole nonprofit thing 10 years ago, and we started the bash, and the numbers were way higher than we thought they would be, and we were overwhelmed and didn't have enough tennis shoes and all this kind of stuff. Shannon volunteered. She's like, hey, let me go shopping. And so she took two of her children shopping, Hayden and his sister Nola. You see them on the screen. They're significantly younger than now. And Shannon would go and she would buy hundreds of pairs of tennis shoes for us. And then, over the years, Hayden kept volunteering because that's what his mom did. And that's what his mom taught him to do. She let her light shine so that it would illuminate for Hayden, like, hey, one of the ways that we live out this love that we know holds us all together is by giving it away. For years, Hayden would volunteer in the shoes. He'd be a runner, and then he ended up shadowing our former director of the bash, Lane. And this past year, he served as the executive director. And he and his sister, Nola, they did an amazing job. They did such a good job that, like, we as the staff weren't exhausted after it was over. And it was one of those God things, like, we were worried, how in the world are we going to afford the bash? We knew we didn't really have enough money in the bash account to make it happen. And, sometimes the West budget can help that, but this was not the year to depend on our budget to compensate or overcompensate for any weaknesses in that budget. But Hayden and Nola did such a great job at thrift shopping and making sure that they watched sales and empowering volunteers that somehow we came out in the black and not the red. And now Hayden lets his light shine, and Nola lets her light shine, so that the world can see that there's a place of love and hope for all people, and that when we work together as a community, the light on the hill, it isn't able to be extinguished or hidden. The light shines for all to see. We're really excited about continuing to be the church and to be the light. I'm so grateful that you've hung in with us, and we do believe the best is yet to be. We're called to be the light. Will you pray with me? Gracious God, you do give us a compelling call to be the salt and preserve the flavor of the love that you have given us, but you also call us to be the light and to take our light and let it shine so brightly for the world to see so that we can be agents of change. We are so grateful for the way that you love us, the way that you forgive us, the way that you hold us in your light. God, help us connect with our light and then boldly and courageously and generously let it shine for all to see. Amen. I invite you to listen to this song.
In a time full of war, be peace. In a time full of doubt, just believe. Yeah, there ain't that much difference between you and me. In a time full of war, be peace. In a world full of hate, be alive. When you do somebody wrong, make it right. Don't hide in the dark, you were born to shine. In a world full of hate, be a light. La 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 la. In a place that needs a change, make a difference. In a time full of noise, just listen. This life is but a breeze, better live it. In a place that needs to change, make a difference. In a world full of hate, be alive. When you do somebody wrong, make it right.
Oh, don't hide in the dark, you were born to shine.
In a world full of hate, be alive. La 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 la. 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 In a race that you can't win, slow it down. Yeah, you only get a one go around. 'Cause the finish line is 6 feet in the ground.
In a race you can't win, just slow it down.
In a world full of hate, be alive.
Oh,
When you do somebody wrong, make it right. Don't hide in the dark, you were born to shine. In a world full of hate, be alive. Yeah, it's hard to live in color when you just see black and white. In a world full of hate, be a light.
How are you going to be the light this week? When we are flying over, you heard me talk about Uganda, when we're flying over and, you can see the city off in the distance. It's so interesting. Like you see also like this just vast expanse of darkness. But then you see these tiny little like orange glowing spaces. At first I didn't know what that was, but then I realized, oh, it's their fires around their village. They all gather around that source of light. It does so many things for them. It helps them sanitize their dishes and wash their clothes. It helps them stay warm. It does get cold in Africa. It also gives them light. Light permeates the darkness. There's a lot of darkness in our world. May we go, and may we be the light. Go in peace. Amen.